Police are gathering CCTV footage from businesses close to the spot where a teenager was stabbed to death in Shoreditch. The boy, who has not been named, was attacked on Saturday night. Today, as friends left flowers, people living nearby said they fear for their own safety. Here's our correspondent Simon Harris.
Hackney Road should be busy with traffic, but today it was a crime scene. A blue police tent covered the spot in Hoxton, where on Saturday night paramedics tried to save the life of a 17-year-old boy. Across the street, a black tarpaulin was draped over the front of a takeaway where it's thought the teenager was stabbed. Mehmet owns the shop next door and thinks his security camera captured the killer running away.
Staff called us. He said, come, police be here. I said, what happened? He said, someone be stabbed. Police called me, come give me password for a camera.
What was on the videotape?
Just when you see the guy run.
Young friends of the victim left flowers and messages on the pavement a few feet from where he died. One read, "You were a good soul." He's the second London teenager to be stabbed to death this year. For people living in this part of the capital, the sound of police sirens on a Saturday night is all too common and crime all too frequent. One woman I spoke to described how she was recently robbed in the street by a man wearing a mask. Another resident, a newcomer to the area, told me how within days of moving in, would-be thieves smashed up his motorbike after trying unsuccessfully to steal it. Kirsty came to the area recently and quickly decided it wasn't safe enough to bring up her 3 children.
There is community spirit here. I've only lived here a short while and the community has been very welcoming and very kind and whatever else. But there's too many kids and gangs hanging around and too much violence on the street, and it's all over postcodes.
David and Christina grew up here more than 70 years ago before moving away. They were back today for a trip down memory lane and were horrified to discover a murder scene.
We used to play out in the streets and go over the park, but I wouldn't feel safe now going out at night, you know. Whereas before you could let your kids out and play.
Just think this is the norm now. It's nothing, you're not so shocked about it now because it's happening daily.
I want to move out of London, to be quite honest with you. I've only been back here a short while and I won't be staying. I certainly won't be bringing my children up here.
The killing was almost certainly in full view of several CCTV cameras. Tonight, Scotland Yard said a 17-year-old was in custody after being arrested on suspicion of murder. Simon Harris, ITV News, Hoxton.
Now, if you're one of the tens of thousands of commuters forced to wait and wait and wait for a Central Line train, TfL apologises today for the chaos on one of the busiest lines. And as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports, a shortage of trains mean you'll have to keep on waiting for some time.
Rush hour at Leytonstone Station, and Central Line commuters are about to have another rubbish journey to work. There aren't enough trains, the gaps between them are too long, and when they do arrive, they're rammed. Some passengers are resorting to desperate measures.
My nearest tube station is Leyton, but I have to basically walk one tube stop to be able to get on the tube.
The ticket prices haven't come down, but my delays have gone up and up and up, and it's just every day trying to get to work is a struggle.
It is very frustrating because also it's really often, so it just lengthens my travel every day.
The shortage of trains is down to a problem with their electric motors. Engineers are said to be working around the clock to replace them. But there are 32 motors on each train, and on any one day, around 20 trains are out of action. Today, at a meeting of the London Assembly, the boss of Transport for London said sorry.
Chair, if I may, I would also like to take this opportunity to apologise to customers of the Central Line who have not been receiving the level of service they should. I'm acutely aware, as I said at the TfL board, that the reliability of the line has not been good enough.
But the problem has been going on for months. The Commissioner told Assembly members the Central Line's poor reliability underscored the need for long-term funding from the government. But the Mayor's opponents accuse him of diverting money to election giveaways, like a partial fares freeze, instead of spending it on crucial improvements. 4 weeks ago, Sadiq Khan announced he was planning to spend £123 million to freeze some fares for a year. City Hall Conservatives think he's got his priorities wrong.
The merits of the fares freeze are clear, but obviously the demerit of the fares freeze is that is money that could have gone into capital. And you've sat here all morning telling us, where is the money for capital? Why is it all the government's fault? Well, here is the money for capital. Here's £123 million that you could put into capital every year.
It is this Mayor's decision that part of those funds should be used to protect Londoners against the increase in the cost of living, where we can make a meaningful impact. And on that, fares is a very direct and meaningful impact.
London Underground is planning what it calls a revised timetable. There will still be fewer trains and the gaps between trains will still be longer than they should be. But at least there'll be consistent gaps.
There was more drama at City Hall this afternoon, wasn't there, over Friday fares? So what happened?
Well, as well as questioning the Mayor's spending priorities when it comes to transport, the Conservatives also challenged him on his proposal to make all fares on Friday off-peak, so all fares on Friday will be much cheaper. It's a 3-month trial, due to start early next month and costing £24 million. But Sadiq Khan's main rival, the Conservative candidate in May's mayoral election, Susan Hall, isn't convinced it's going to happen.
Mr Mayor, the Friday Fares initiative, will it definitely go ahead?
It's contingent upon an agreement with the privatised train operating companies, and so once we've reached an agreement, I'll be making an announcement, but no agreement's been reached as of yet.
It appears the plan was announced before the train operating companies were consulted, and they, not surprisingly, want to be compensated for any lost revenue, which left Sadiq Khan admitting this afternoon that if he can't get agreement with them, it might not go ahead.
All right, Simon, thanks very much.
An MP who's stepping down because of death threats is calling for an annual report to show how many politicians are facing danger. Mike Freer, the Conservative MP for Finchley and Golders Green, sat down with our political correspondent Simon Harris ahead of tonight's edition of The Late Debate. Mike Freer is giving up his parliamentary career after an alleged arson attack on his office in December. It was the final straw for Mr Freer and his husband after a series of threats. He was also stalked by the killer of the Southend MP, Sir David Amess, but had a lucky escape. I spoke to him earlier.
So there'd been numerous kind of incidents which had unnerved both me and Angela, my husband, but the arson attack really was the final straw. So after that, Angela's view was, it doesn't really matter what the motive is, you know, you're done.
What surprised you about the reaction to your resignation from your colleagues?
How much there is of it. So I was staggered that the week after I made the announcement, 4 Labour MPs, as well as my side, but 4 Labour MPs told me that they had had death threats and the person responsible was in prison. And I'm going, why didn't I know that? My personal view is that Parliament should publish at least an annual report saying this is what's happened this year. You know, we've had 150 death threats, we've had 200 attacks on constituency offices, because I don't think people know the scale of the problem.
I'll be joined in the studio by Labour MP Abena Oppang-Asari, Elliot Coburn for the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrat MP Sarah Olney. As well as MP safety, we'll also talk about Sadiq Khan's pre-election spending spree on cheaper fares and new names for the Overground. That's The Late Debate here on ITV1 after news at 10.
But first, it's not just the famous sights of Big Ben and Buckingham Palace that draw millions of tourists to London each year. Until a couple of years ago, visitors flying in from outside the EU got the added financial bonus of claiming back VAT, making goods bought here 20% cheaper. But now there's hope of a U-turn by the government after a significant impact on businesses right across the capital. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
Leboni Saha has spent a decade developing her luxury fashion brand. The London-based designer sells to customers across the globe. Her latest creations have just graced the catwalk during London Fashion Week. But Leboni is worried about the effect of Britain's VAT rules on her international clients.
The fact that they are, coming to the UK and having to pay the additional tax is not an ideal situation. And because of UK's close proximity to other fashion capitals like Milan or Paris, they do have other opportunities to shop elsewhere without having to actually spend that disposable income in the UK.
Before 2021, visitors from some overseas countries could claim back VAT on goods bought in the UK. It cut 20% off the price tag. But when he was Chancellor, Rishi Sunak abolished the tax break. At Heathrow's T5, part terminal, part shopping precinct, they've seen sales fall by more than a third.
Why would you shop in London today, or in Oxford, Cambridge, Edinburgh, or here at Heathrow, if you can buy those same items on the next stop on your European trip in Rome or in Paris or Milan without paying tax.
The scrapping of VAT-free shopping, often referred to as the tourist tax, is now being reviewed by the Office for Budget Responsibility. The government is under increasing pressure to do a U-turn in next month's budget.
If we look at 2023, we can see our visitor international numbers are pretty much back to 2019 levels, just down 4%, but spend is down 19%. So clearly that is having a massive impact on trade in the West End.
The Treasury is £2 billion a year better off since VAT-free shopping ended, and officials aren't convinced it's affecting the number of tourists coming to London. A spokesperson said any decision would be made within the context of the wider public finances. Simon Harris, ITV News, the West End.